So, welcome everybody to the webinar about the Fortissimo for EuroHPC, FF4EuroHPC open call. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the project and the overall Fortissimo approach, and then give you a briefing on the details of the open call, which covers things like obviously the deadlines, but also the expectations for experiments and where you can get more information. So the first question, I guess, is to say, well, why use HPC in business? And what we're looking at is the fact that HPC, high performance computing, data analytics, IoT, and artificial intelligence and machine learning, they're becoming indispensable tools for Industry 4.0. What we see is that digital revolution is being driven by data intelligence using those tools and is generating a flood of data. And if we're going to create knowledge and meaning from that data, we need HPC, and that will lead to better products and processes in a range of applications. So what you will hear very often is that we're looking at advanced HPC services because we're targeting European companies and trying to help them to increase quality and increase innovation to help them prosper in the global marketplace. A phrase that's been used in the past quite often, but I think came from the US, was to outcompute is to outcompete, and that's what it's about. That the Fortissimo approach is trying to give access to those advantages of being able to compute, and those advantages in business. However, if you look at this, the source for this, the Council of Competitiveness, there are a number of reasons for why industry should be using HPC. Reducing time to solution, solving problems that couldn't be solved in any other way, reducing costs compared to doing alternatives like physical testing, and just getting a better return on investment. So those are the arguments for, and there is also political context. This slide gives me the opportunity to thank the person in the middle of that picture, which is Professor Mark Parsons, who was the coordinator of the prior Fortissimo projects. And he is presenting that to Monsieur Barnier at one of the Hanover trade exhibitions, trade fairs. And this was explaining about the Fortissimo projects and how they could impact industrial design. And in this case, it was designed for a Lamborghini. So the political context is actually important for all of us. It's not the major investments being made into supercomputers, and that's and at EuroHPC, the joint undertaking is a major commitment for the European Union. It's not just about science, but it's about science and industry. And so we need to ensure that we're supporting our universities and research establishments, but also companies that can access and benefit from supercomputing. So the Fortissimo approach is very much aligned with that. The core of the Fortissimo approach is to perform experiments, and those are actually business-oriented application experiments, and the target is to see that we can actually deliver real business impact through use of HPC. And the main mechanism is that we're looking to attract really good, top quality, innovative experiments based around SME needs through open calls for proposals. And this was very successful in the past. We've had two prior projects, Fortissimo and Fortissimo 2, and they executed a total of 92 experiments. And of those, 79 of those experiments were able to generate really impressive business cases for the impact that the developments had for their business, for their challenges and their issues, and we created a large set of success stories that explain that from a business context. I'm going to give you a few examples. There were, as you just saw, many successful experiments, but I'll show you just a few, and also at the same time explain the sort of consortia that were involved in those individual experiments, so you get an idea of what what type of combination, what type of activities could be foreseen. So this was all based on, this is an experiment that looked at the process of maintenance of pipeline systems, so actually tightening flanges, as you see in that photo there. And so it was based around the needs of Texas Controls, a Spanish SME, and what the results they were able to create through better planning or the improvement of the process through the use of HPC led to a reduction in time and reduction in costs for the SME, and really significant savings for the customers of that SME. So the experiment was performed with the industrial end user, the SME. There was a technology provider, and then an HPC center providing also the HPC expertise. The next example is an experiment, one of three actually, that won IDC Innovation Awards. This was an award in 2016 for the demonstrating economic benefit for using high-performance computing or high-performance HPC cloud. It's SME based in Italy, and they were looking at how to minimize loss in the steel production process. And what they saw was with the new technology that they had, they could realize a saving between 420 and 600,000 euros per year, a significant amount for that SME. This was a small consortium. The SME Ergolines was the industrial end user, and then we had Arctor, which was an HPC center and provision of HPC expertise. A very different non-manufacturing experiment here. This is a case where the SME was both an industrial consulting company and itself an independent software vendor, an ISV. So this is IES is a Scottish SME, and what they're providing consulting in the area of urban planning. So they providing HPC cloud solutions to their customers, and that led to really major reductions in costs compared with in-house use. This is again an experiment with just two partners. You've got the SME, the consultant and software vendor, and then EPCC with the HPC resources and HPC expertise. The final example is perhaps more classical application when you think of supercomputing. This is CFD. It's actually specifically for a Swedish SME, Koenigsegg, that their speciality is high performance sports cars. So what they were doing was using CFD and later the cloud system to improve their design and the design process. I guess not many of us are used to driving at 440 kilometers an hour, but that was their design requirement, and they needed to find way to improve the design to increase the downforce and keep the stability of the car on the road at those high speeds. And what the benefits were for them were actually reduce design costs, reduce costs of wind tunnel testing, and a reduced time to market. So those are the business arguments for that experiment. Slightly bigger consortium, you had the SME end user, you had then an ISV, a software vendor, an HPC expert, an HPC center, and they were the partners chosen that were needed to deliver on the needs of the experiments performed. So FF4EuroHPC is the new project in the line of Fortissimo projects. It's funded by the program run by the EuroHPC joint undertaking. It started in September and has a three-year duration, and it's led by HLRS and has a small number of other partners. Arctor, Seska, and Cinica are all HPC centers, and Scarpos and Teratech are small organizations working on open calls and support for the SMEs involved. The project's about stimulating innovation potential of SMEs, and so we're following up on that Fortissimo approach, that using HPC and advanced services has the potential to increase the innovation of industrial companies. We are helping or facilitating access for SMEs to HPC-based infrastructure and services, and the broader innovation. So we want to push the wider use of HPC amongst many communities and sectors, and that will be done by promoting the best practices and the success stories that we will gain from the business application experiments. And by doing so, we want to lower barriers for SMEs in being able to make use of the HPC technologies to improve their innovation. So the methodology is rather much you'd expect from my introduction. We want to continue to support SMEs, in particular being able to take up HPC. We will extend and continue the Fortissimo approach. So the whole project is about the operation of a portfolio of business-oriented application experiments driven by SME needs. We will collaborate closely with the national HPC competence centres, and doing that through the EuroHPC projects, Castiel and EuroCC. And we want to support the SMEs that are selected through the open calls and actually perform experiments to get as much as possible out of the experiment developments to establish their HPC related innovation. So, coming now to the open call. We're looking for highest quality experiments involving innovative agile SMEs, and it's all about use of advanced HPC services. So it's quite clear that the objectives of the call, we're looking for experiments that really address business challenges from European SMEs from a variety of application domains. There is a preference, or this was expressed in the work program that we applied to for the project. That preference given to engineering and manufacturing, but actually also any sector is able to demonstrate really great impact or great economic impact. So important sectors for Europe are sought. What we are looking for is really reaching out to SMEs that are new to use of HPC. So we will be giving priority to consortia centered on SMEs new to use of advanced HPC services. And I'll give you 2 slides on our expectations for the experiments. As I showed you some examples earlier, so we do expect a proposal for an experiment to involve all the parties necessary to carry out the work, and carry out the work to be able to lead to an effective demonstration of the impact of using HPC to address the business challenges of the core SME. And so that SME in the picture on the top will be the end user in the middle. And then whether or not you need all of the various players given here depends on on the problem at hand. But you'd expect to have software provider, be it research or ISV, HPC experts, HPC service provider, maybe application experts. So we're typically looking for, as you saw earlier, very compact consortia. We do need you to define all the resources you need and budget for them. So the project cannot provide computing resources, so you will need to cover that in your plan. If there are data protection or access issues that relate to the business case that you're looking at, then you need to make sure that what you do in the experiment adheres to your requirements. So make sure you cover those. As I already mentioned, we're looking at promoting HPC use really widely. So it's very, very important for us that we're able to generate a significant set of really impressive, convincing success stories. So we need each experiment to be able to generate publishable success stories based on the solution of the real world problems. There may be cases from some companies where there are particular industrial specialization areas or regional priorities, so experiments should align with those where appropriate. Then we use the phrase complementary to past Fortissimo projects. What we mean by that is it should be different. So we're not looking for a repetition of what's been done before. So there's no need for you to link in to past experiments, but be different, provide something that's new. We want to be very transparent about the evaluation of proposals, and so the documentation you can find on the website gives you the details about how we evaluate. We also have a checklist that we share between evaluators and proposers, so you can see the questions we're asking the evaluators to answer. The project places absolute priority on impact. Not surprising for what I've just said earlier. So of the 4 criteria here, the first criterion has a double score. Each of the criterion has a score of 5 points, so you have a maximum of 25 points. And we do apply a threshold. So to be able to be considered for funding, you need to have a score above 3, or at least 3 in the first 3 criteria. So the criteria are impact first, then we need sound quality work plans, the quality of the consortium as a whole and of the individuals should be high, and then again effective and justified deployment of resources. The funding of experiments will be done via the financial support for third parties method. So each of the third parties in experiments will have a contract with the FF4EuroHPC coordinator and will receive funding from the project. The funding rules for that are the same as for the beneficiaries of the project, and these are essentially Horizon 2020 rules. We receive funding from the EuroHPC joint undertaking from the European Commission, and that means that the funding is 100% of eligible costs. There are some boundary conditions for the funding per experiment or per party. So any experiment should have a funding budget that does not exceed 200,000 euros. It may be that third parties are involved in multiple experiments, and that's the case, then the third party funding for an individual organization has a maximum of 150,000 across all such experiments. It is the case that certain beneficiaries of the project, and that's HLRS, CESCA, and Cinica, they are eligible to participate. So the restriction is that those partners involved in the evaluation of open calls are not allowed to participate, but the others are. But their costs are not to be included in the budget. They should be visible in the proposal, that we know which costs are being generated there, but they're not included in the requested funding. So key call details. The submission deadline is the 27th of January 2021 at 1700 hours Brussels time. The indicative total funding budget for the Core 1 is 3 million euros. The expected duration of experiments is a maximum of 15 months, and we hope that they will be starting in June 2021. I've already mentioned maximum funding request per proposal is 200,000 euros. Submission, we'll come back to it again later. It's in electronic form and in English, and this can be done via the FF4EuroHPC website. There's a special site, sub-site on calls, and then there's a submission site, which leads you to a submission tool. The proposals are submitted as PDFs, and they're in 2 parts. The administrative part is in Part A, which is just a cover page and a set of tables. No additional information to be included there. And Part B is the technical part, so that's a cover page plus maximum 10 pages. And we will be strict about those limits. So if proposals are above the page limit, they will be rejected. There is a lot of information. detailed instructions and about the proposal submission and about the call in general and the evaluation criteria, they're on the FF4EuroHPC website. And I've already mentioned when the submission date is. There's quite a bit of documentation available. There's an introduction document that gives you the general scope of the call, and then a guideline for proposers. And then there are Word documents that you can use to put together the proposal. Then there are additional online subpages. There is, as I already mentioned, a proposer evaluator checklist, so the proposer can see the questions we ask of the evaluators. And then there's a subpage giving you answers to frequently asked questions. And as I said, they're all available at the URL there. So if you have questions, and the FAQ is a source of possible answers there. But if you still have additional questions, you can contact us, and there's a general email address which you can use to contact the call management team, and we'll give you feedback about your generic questions. With that, thank you for your participation, and we'll move to a Q&A session.